Hey, welcome back to Memories of Margaret, where the life and legacy of Margaret Curle will be shared through the stories of her love for Christ, her family, her love of learning, and her love of all people. I'm your host, Martha Sue French. I am also the youngest of 6 children of Howard and Margaret Curle. I'm excited that we have our first guest of the season joining me today, Jeremy Curle. So today's format is going to be a little different in that I'm going to read a short poem, but the remainder of the broadcast will be asking questions and having Jeremy share his memories or any stories he has about Nan and Pat. So welcome, Jeremy, aka Jerbug to me. There may be viewers tuning in who are not familiar with our family dynamic. So could you please provide a little background information about you or a bio and your relationship to Margaret?
Yeah, she's my grandmother, and she played a huge role in raising me, and so much more than I can put into words. I am Wyoma's son, which is your sister, and she is the next to youngest child out of the 6.
Yeah.
I'm a lot like the 7th son in a way because they did play such a role in raising me, but I mean, I'm as my roots are here. I still live where they raised me, and it's everything you see right here is Nan and Pap had something to do with
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I had mentioned in the very first episode that while the title of this series is, or this podcast is Memories of Margaret, you can't really separate Margaret from Howard, Mama from Daddy, or in your case, Nan from Pap.
it. Right.
So today's episode is going to be titled Remembering Nan and Pap.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'm going to read a short poem. It's entitled Legacy. And from there, what we can do is just delve into some memories, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the poem Legacy can be found in Mama's poetry book, From My Heart to Yours. It's short and sweet, but it's also powerful. So here it is, Legacy. Leave your mark upon the world by doing every day some kind act that makes all glad you came along this way. That's it. So, Jeremy, I wanted you to be the first guest because, as you and I have briefly discussed, you have a unique point of view or vantage point because you grew up with mom and daddy.
Right.
But you were a grandchild, like you said, like a 7th child, but you were but you were the grandchild.
Right.
And we also talked a little about, with my being the youngest, I don't have the same memories as my older siblings may have. And you have even different memories than I do. So some of the memories that you have, I've never experienced.
Right.
And some of the memories I have, you never experienced. But we both saw their love and actions firsthand. It's just from different vantage points. So you kind of told us like where you grew up. So kind of share, what do you remember about the living conditions where you grew up?
First of all, I remember you being home before you left to start your life and get married and have children. I mean, that's how far back, we go. I remember you being
Yes.
there. The old house. We lived in the house that you all were raised in up until I was, I think, 8 years old.
Okay.
No running water. Um, what most people would call extremely poor living conditions, but so full of love that none of it mattered.
We didn't
All
even realize it.
had no idea. Not
Right.
only that, the people that would come and visit um, seemed to want to stay, even though their homes were nicer than the place they were visiting. And it was just the way that they. It had nothing to do with material things. Everything was. There was such a light that came out of them that it didn't matter that we didn't have the best of everything or somewhere even far below, what most people call mid-range living. That we didn't have much,
We
and
did.
it didn't matter.
I remember, and I just interject this briefly because you said that about it wasn't about the surroundings. I remember, if anything, if you could classify it today, Mama would be called a hoarder. I mean, and I'm ashamed
Yeah.
now, but I was embarrassed to have my friends come visit me because it was crowded and junky all the time. And I
Yeah.
had this friend, I'm gonna go ahead and name her name because hey, this is what this is. It's remembering mom and daddy and the impact they had.
Mhm.
Monique Douglas, Dr. Douglas is rich, lived in Magnolia, lived in the mansion,
Yeah.
but had always been friends. And I was embarrassed because I'd been to her house. I mean, it was immaculate, and it was huge, and it had the plastic on the furniture in the living room. It was all white room, it was just like, it was like a palace to me coming from
Right.
where we came from. And she came out there one day, and I remember I was embarrassed, and she came in, but she said to me something that sticks with me to this day because I'm telling the story.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I don't, I'm embarrassed. I don't want you to come to my house or whatever. And she said, but y'all can live in your house.
Mm. Right.
And then years later, she had told me like that room they had, everything was white and everything. They couldn't go in. You know what I'm saying? It was almost like a museum. They couldn't even live almost like in their house. She loved the fact that we lived in our house and we loved each other.
Yeah. It was a house. It was a home, not a house.
Exactly.
There's a
And
difference.
there's a huge difference.
Mm.
So, what are the earliest memories you have of mama and daddy? Either jointly or individually. It doesn't matter.
Of course, everyone talks about me combing Pap's hair. Everybody talks about that in the family, and I remember that.
I remember
I
that
remember
too.
standing up behind him combing his hair, and I would just mimic what I saw other people do, and if he moved because I hit a what we call a nap, I would hit him with the comb and tell him to be still because I
Wouldn't you?
saw other people do that. You know what I mean? I was just too young to know better, and he just went along with it because he loved
Well, and the thing is too, I remember I saw that. I
me.
saw it firsthand. And
That
sometimes
happened.
because I don't even think Pap had a nap in his head,
No,
honestly.
he didn't, but
But
he,
he
I
loved the
was a
way
kid.
that it felt because it was excuse me, that big ass yellow comb, that heavy one. It was that thick one.
Yeah,
And he just liked the way it felt, and like you would just put it here and he would just move his head down and it would just glide through his head.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
were like,
yeah,
oh yeah, I'll leave that boy alone. He I mean, but see, that's what I'm saying about the grandchild thing. You could get away with stuff that I couldn't get away with, and they say I got away with stuff because I was the baby. Like,
right.
oh no, but yeah, I remember that hair combing
Yeah,
incident.
I can review. It's funny you talked about Nan being a hoarder or whatever you would want to call that, but I think she was just so resourceful that she kept everything just in case she needed it. And I mean, at this age, I can look back and see that, but when I was younger, I didn't understand that. But she was always providing for other people, even though she didn't have very much, and that's amazing in itself.
I remember even having gifts to take to school, but we couldn't afford wrapping paper.
Right?
Mama had saved the newspapers, and they weren't like we didn't subscribe to them because we couldn't afford it. People would give mama stuff, like in lieu of payment sometime. Oh, here's our old newspapers, or here are our old hand-me-down stuff, here are our old whatever. But she would save the comics. I remember that because
Yeah.
the comics were colorful.
Yes.
And she would wrap the gifts, and they may be very small, but it was something to take to school in the comic paper.
Yeah. That
Oh
is.
man,
I remember that.
people thought we was like, oh, that's so creative. No, that was mama.
That was necessity.
It was necessity,
Right.
but other people saw it as being creative.
Yes. And
I
it
just,
was.
oh, it was. And so we could tell a million stories, but like I said, I'm gonna try to stay on track, but there's so many stories like that.
That is a good illustration of everything she touched was magic.
Mm.
And I can't even explain it any more than that. Everything she was involved with, or people, places, things, it didn't matter. If she had a hand in it, she added this magical touch to it that I can't really put into words.
I found, and I think I was telling you some of the word searches, and that's going to be a later episode. Some of the word searches that she meticulously made herself. I'm gonna upload them and share them on the screen, like I said, in a later episode. But she
Right.
made them herself. Now, some of the words, which is really sad in today's society, because some of the words are in cursive. So
Right.
younger kids can't even read what the word is to find it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But some of, I mean, I'm talking girls' names, boys' names, names in the Bible, color. I mean, but she took the time to each. I can hold one up real quick, but again, I'll upload it so you can see it better. But it's like, how how did you do that? And she's like, word search puzzle by Margaret Curle. Words are forward, backward, vertical, horizontal, and diagonal. And some words can overlap others.
Oh yeah.
She did these by hand. I have a lot of these.
Oh yeah.
A
I remember
lot.
her making that type of stuff, just sitting at the table, just
And
with her drink, just doing that.
who does that? I mean, well,
Right.
Mama did. Yeah, you're like, who does that, Mama? Okay,
Yeah.
but like you said, getting back to the whole, everything was an experience. It was out of necessity. It was because we were poor, but we didn't know that. We just know she was creative.
Right. Right. And what the world calls poor and what the world calls rich are not always accurate.
It's
Because there are a lot of things that money cannot buy.
that was evident when Daddy passed away and when Mama passed away.
Yes.
Just the amount of people
Oh yeah.
who came to pay their respects.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
remember Greg Wooten said it when Pap died. He said it was like when the Kennedys died. That's how many people showed up at the funeral home.
I remember them. Do you remember the funeral home was in E Town?
Yes.
And I remember people were down the sidewalk around the corner.
Yeah.
They waited.
It looked like the line to get in like a concert
Yeah.
or something like that. It was unbelievable.
And that's the thing, is that you ever seen It's a Wonderful Life?
Oh
Watch
yeah.
that movie.
Hmm.
One of my favorites. I love that movie. And
Yeah.
at the end, because I always say, instead of saying George Bailey, I say Howard Curle,
Right.
the richest man in town,
Right. Yeah.
because he was.
Yeah. Yeah. He was. And you talk about memories. I remember Nan's hands. We talked about that a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, we were talking about everything she touched. I remember her hands because they fed me and they healed me and she was she was so much to so many people that I don't even know how you don't just give out doing that much for people. It's hard for me to fathom how much she actually did because here it is. What? How many years has she been gone? 20,
23. It'll be 23
23
this
years.
year. Yeah.
I still see people that say things to me about her and how she affected their lives.
And that's one of the
I mean,
reasons why I
random.
wanted to do this, Memories of Margaret,
Yeah.
because that's the impact that not only Mama, but Daddy had. Here it is, 23 and 24 years later, we're still talking about them, still talking about what they fed into us. And
Yeah.
a thing I thought the other day, Jeremy, you will be 48 this year.
Yes.
So think about it. Daddy will have passed 24 years. You've lived now half of your life without Daddy.
Right.
Have you thought about it in those terms?
I don't really because I haven't. They are as much with
Mm.
me today as they always were, but I know what you mean.
Right.
You know
In
what I mean?
the physical realm.
Yeah, I would give anything to physically see them again. I mean,
Oh,
I
me and
don't
you
even
both.
don't even know how to explain it, but I would.
I guess, and the things that I think, oh, mama would say this or daddy would say this.
Yeah,
But like I said earlier, it's kind of hard to separate the two. So
it
I'm
is.
going to pivot and ask you if these memories would trigger anything. So in the poem, I'd say it's a very short poem, but it says, by doing every day some kind act that makes all glad you came along this way. Are there any small acts or kind acts, specific examples that you remember of that mama
Yeah,
or daddy did?
I really do. Yeah, I remember when I was a child. I mean, I'm not sure how old I was, but I was young enough that I was standing up in the back seat of the car, looking out the window.
Those
And,
before seatbelts, I take it.
yeah, well, before anybody cared,
Right,
I
right.
mean, it's just different. But she, there was a lady on a bench outside of the grocery store in Houchins and Hodgenville,
Yeah.
and she was dirt poor. When you think of the words dirt poor, that's what this lady was. I don't even know what her name was, but I remember people kind of looking at her in a negative way and not really wanting to interact. You know, she was a very poor lady. Her clothes were dirty, and I remember Nan sitting down, coming out of the store, and I was in the car with Pat, and she came out of the store and sat down beside this lady, and like took her hand in her hand,
Mm.
you know, held her hand, and this woman looked up at her and lit up. And she sat there and talked to her. I don't know what she said to her. I don't know what the the interaction was, but this lady smiled and she made her appear human
Mm.
just by treating her like a human being. It was almost like you saw a weight lifted off that woman's shoulders when Nan sat down and interacted with her after all these other people shunned her.
And acted like she didn't even exist.
Like she wasn't, or like she was a piece of garbage. And that has stuck with me my whole life. That the way you've seen the memes, it says treat the janitor like you treat the CEO,
Absolutely.
and I saw that firsthand. And it wasn't anything she did for attention, or it was just who she was. I mean, she knew this lady. You know what I mean? And I'm
Right.
telling you, when we pulled off, that she looked like a different person just after I saw Nan just speak with her. She showed her love. You know what I mean?
And I think you had said this before we started recording too. The lessons that we were
Yeah.
taught was not that it was browbeat in us.
No.
It's just exactly what you just described. It's what we saw. It's
Yes.
what we saw
Accurate.
them live. It was
Yes.
their life.
Yes, it was.
So we saw the life lessons by them carrying it out. It wasn't and I have said this to my son before, but I don't really mean, I'm like, do as I say, not as I do, type thing. They didn't even have
Right.
to do that. They lived their life in such a way. Like I said, the others are glad they came along this way, like, the legacy says. But
Yeah.
I don't know that I remember that story. So that's
Right.
what I'm saying. We had different vantage points, viewpoints of
Yes.
our memories, but all of our memories kind of go back to the same place, is that it's who they were and how they lived their lives and
Right.
what impact it had
Right.
on us and on other people too.
Hmm.
You mentioned, like, what, 23, almost 23 years later now. And
Yeah.
also in the first episode, I talk about, this is the 100th year of Mama's birth. She was born in 1924. She would have been 100 years old. That in itself is like, what, 100 years old. Think of the life, of the impact that she would have. But here it is, 23, almost 24 years later, people are still talking about mom and dad. If I do a post, people are, oh, I remember what a sweet, person she was, or she did this, or she did that. Things that we probably don't even know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, we were poor. I um would joke about it, because that was, once I did realize we were poor, I would, try to have jokes about it to get through it or whatever. But I would say we were so poor we couldn't even afford O and R. We were just poor. Yeah.
Right.
But sometimes I remember fussing, at mom, why y'all give them this or why do y'all do that? We don't even have it. How can y'all give away something that we don't have? But the funny thing is, but we really never did without. It was
Right.
almost like the tenfold thing, you
Right.
put it out there and you do it from your heart, which is what they did,
Yes.
and they got it back.
I can remember coming home, being gone and coming home, and there would just be boxes of food and things left on the porch from people we didn't even know who left it. It would be boxes of vegetables and food and bread and things, and like people would leave like what almost like leaving a gift for them at
Yes.
the door.
I remember people would do that with their because at one point earlier in life, I remember we had a garden, but we didn't always have a garden. But
Right.
people around us would have gardens, and I don't know that I had ever mentioned this before. We talked about it. We were the first Black family to live out in the country, out
Right.
in Roanoke, period.
Right.
So we weren't embraced. It was a time and an era where we weren't embraced for being out there. It was like, what are y'all doing out here?
Right.
But again, they never changed who they were. And
Hmm.
then people were like, they saw that.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, they would leave. We had these extra tomatoes. I love when we got the tomatoes. Oh, we had these extra tomatoes. Oh, we had these extra,
Right.
then we had these extra whatever from our garden and wanted to, give them to you.
Yes.
Okay.
And it only took one meeting. If you met them one time, it would change you. I can remember Halloween. People would bring their children, and the children would be as excited to see them as the parents were.
Wow, that's
So,
something.
I mean, and it was unreal. It's hard. It like I told you the other night. It was like they had a light in them that would not allow the darkness to even come into the room. It was I watched Nan smile when she was going through and smile and try to comfort other people while she was going through bone cancer
Well,
therapy. I mean, I don't even know how do you do that. And she was still trying to console and was worried about the well being of other people, and you could see that she was in physical pain
yes. And
and
she would write poems for other people
didn't
to
let
help them when she would, like you said, when she was in pain.
right. Her light was so strong that nothing could dim it. Nothing that I ever saw. Not racism, like you were talking about, not classism, not money, not the lack of physical things. The light was too strong.
The glimpse that I did see and going through some of her poems, and it didn't dim it, but you could see a new aspect of it in
Right.
her writing was after Daddy passed away.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
she
man.
wrote poems like, a widow's pain. And, I mean, and she once told me, because I would try to come visit more often after that. I try to come home once a month.
Yes.
And she said, you don't understand. She said, I was with him more or longer in my life than with anybody. I was with him longer than I was with my kids, with my parents. She had been with Daddy longer than she had been with anybody in her whole life.
Right.
And then she also said, and it made me think about this too, when people pass, right after they pass, people are there. She
Right.
said it's after everybody goes away.
Yes.
Within the first week, everybody goes away and then they almost like forget about it.
Right.
Uh, it
That's
just,
true. That's true.
because like I said, one without the other, they just didn't exist.
Right. Yeah. They were a half of a whole, one half of a whole. They together they're the reason we're all sitting here.
Yeah. I think you said it best too. You said they were yin and yang,
Right. They
because
were.
mama was positive that yeah,
Yes.
daddy was negative. Daddy was he was a worry wart.
Yeah.
And mama
Yeah.
was always so positive, with everything.
Yeah.
And but they made it work, they made it work.
How much time do we have on here? Do you know?
You know what? I don't, because I haven't been given time, and
Okay.
I knew I was going to get off, but that's the
Wanna,
thing. When
I
we
want
talk
to say
about
something.
this, I want you to be on again. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Because there's so many things that we can talk about, but tell me what you're going to say.
I want this to be documented. That I don't know if you know this. My mother, she was 19 when she had me, and looking back, she was a child. She was doing the best she could, but she worked at a factory and worked hard. So they spent them. I spent my days with them. Because that's just the way it worked out.
Right.
But when she was pregnant, she told me that a nurse at the hospital, told her to abort me, and that Nan told her no. So she literally saved my life.
I had not heard that story.
That that is ask my mom about it. Ask Wyoma Curl, your sister. Ask her about it. I did not know that till I got older. So that's how the power she had in me being here is that she literally saved my life by telling the medical people that no, she has a home and we're going to help her take care of him the
Oh
rest of
my gosh.
the Now you imagine this is in the 70s,
Yes.
a
I
different
can say,
time,
and it was still such a stigma at that
right?
time.
Yeah, it's a different
And
time. So she saved my life,
I had not, I see what I'm saying. That's why I want guests on, because
right?
there are memories that other people have that I have no idea what happened. None.
Yeah,
That gives me chills. She did. She
right.
And when Mama said something, it was powerful. And again, this will come out in later episodes of I'm thinking, oh, this, and that. And she gave me advice that was life changing. I'll
Yes.
just say that, life advice. So what
Hmm.
I'm gonna do now, because I know it's been over, like I said, what I said we normally do, but I
Right.
had also said in the very first episode that when we have guests, it is going to go a little longer, because just exactly like this, it's not like just listening to me, it's listening to the stories and then interjecting back and forth. So again, thank you for doing this, Jeremy.
Oh, thank you for having me.
What I'm gonna do now is I'm share just 4 pictures, and then you tell me what comes to mind, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, sounds good. Wow, that is that I love that picture because he's young and strong and healthy. Um, the word that comes to mind is knife. That's what they said his nickname was. You know how sharp you got to be to get the nickname knife.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, that is an awesome picture. I love it.
I love that picture too. It
I-
says we have 10 minutes. So I'm like, okay, we'll be done in 10 minutes.
okay,
Look
yeah.
at the pipe. I mean, there I can see Jimmy.
Oh, I see him. I see Jimmy, Jamie, Kenny, Billy.
I
Uh,
see Billy a little bit in that one, but I see more Jimmy in that one. And then
mhm.
this is his grandfather, Scott
Oh yeah,
Skaggs. This is the one where the young picture I have that'll be showing up later. Kai, remember that? It's when he was young and had that flipped over hair.
I
It
do.
looks just like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that'll be a later episode. Okay, here's the next picture.
Okay. Yeah. The Queen.
Look
That's
at
what
that.
comes to mind. Yeah.
I
Uh,
think regal when I see
yes.
this.
A Queen. It doesn't really look like Nan to me, but I mean, we do change in our youth. From our youth to getting older, but it doesn't look as much like her as some of the other pictures I've seen.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, oh, look how so it has to be the high school, because it has to be her diploma. And look at the dress, you know what I'm saying? Look at the dress.
Yeah.
And in
Uh,
later episodes, I'm gonna go through like some of her diary and some of the um things that she, got back when at high school and what she thought in high school. Totally not what I thought in high school, but that's a whole nother story.
beautiful.
Next picture.
My childhood. Wow. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff. Of course, that's Scott and TJ and me. We were kids, but what TJ is sitting on is a pony,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of stuff they gave us. What you know how many kids grow up with a pony? Not that many.
No.
We had two.
at all.
And
Just
look,
that.
I mean, look at the smiles on our faces.
I know. That's the thing. It's like that's joy.
Yes,
That's
it is.
pure joy.
I mean, it was such a beautiful time to live through, and they made it that way.
And they made it possible. Okay, next picture. I said there were four, there are actually five.
Okay. Oh wow.
Have
Wow.
you seen this in a while?
I haven't, not in a long time. I mean,
This
that's
was
just
before TJ and Ebony were even thoughts in anybody's eyes.
that's beautiful. I
Look, there's you right
I know it. I know it. And see his hand. I remember his hands.
here.
They were
Yes,
so strong and they were so capable, and they just you just felt safe. You know,
absolutely.
I felt safe sitting there.
So let me just kind of go through for those who may not know. This is Daddy. Look at Big Head Scott Curl.
Scott.
T,
Yeah.
that's you, Jeremy. Look, Jamie,
Yes.
Jamel, and Nicole.
Yeah.
And I
I
think this
remember
was at
everybody in that picture.
Jimmy and Kay's house over at Hutchinson Heights, I think.
I didn't know where it was, but it's beautiful.
Isn't it? Now here's the last picture. What does this bring anything to mind?
I remember that day. Um,
I love that picture.
I love it too. I'm so glad we have that picture. Just it speaks for itself. Everyone in that picture is you can see that you can almost feel the love
You
just
can.
coming just emanating from them. They loved us so much that it affected my life. It taught me what love was.
Mm.
I mean, and we love each other in that same way. You know, I mean, of course, no family's perfect, but we do have a deep love for each other because we were taught from people that's what they had in abundance was love for
Absolutely.
us and love for other people.
I miss most that I feel like once since they passed,
Mhm.
it's like they were the glue, and
Of course.
I miss those times. I look back at that and a lot of those pictures and I'm like, I wish and I want to recreate that. And some things you can recreate, some things you can't recreate. Like, life is life.
Right.
Um, but with the timing, I'm gonna stop right there and I'm gonna say, um, are there any final points you want to get across before we kind of close this out?
I just, you know, I see them in each of us. Not necessarily, no one is exactly like them, but I see their gifts in each of us. Things like reading or writing, you know what I mean, or
Yes.
I write poetry. There's all these things that were passed down into the family, and I see these. You know, you are very smart. You have a great sense of humor. You are you and I see Nan and Pap in you sitting here talking to you. I see it in my mother. I see it in Kenny. I see it in Jim. You know, so I think that is the biggest takeaway for me is that they are still here today. And I still run into people. I saw a lady at the grocery store recently. I don't even know who she was, and she went on and on about how Nan had affected her family's life. I don't even know what this woman's name is, but I was with Mom, and she knew who we were, and we had to talk to her for 5 or 10 minutes because she just wanted to go on and on about how Nan had affected her. So
Wow.
23 years later, that speaks volumes.
It does speak volumes. Thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you, Jeremy, for joining and agreeing to be the first guest on Memories of Margaret. You set the bar for those following. So don't be surprised if I kind of reach back out to you in subsequent seasons, tap you and ask you to be a guest again. So now that I have you on camera, would you be willing to do that?
I would love
Thank you. Thank you. Look, yeah, putting you on the spot.
to.
Yeah, okay. So again, thank you for tuning in to Memories of Margaret. If you don't want to miss an episode, please subscribe, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify, and also like us on the Facebook page, Memories of Margaret. We always would appreciate your feedback. So if you would like to be a guest on a future episode, leave me a message on the Facebook page, again, Memories of Margaret, or send an email to It's Memories of Margaret Naomi at gmail.com. Naomi. Memories of Margaret Naomi at gmail.com. Now, in the next episode, I'll be sharing more poetry and memories of Margaret. So until next time, make memories with your family.